In this video cheat sheet, we're going to be doing some IPv6 addressing on our network. We're going to start off with two baseline show commands, show IPv6 route and interface brief. And then we're going to enable a debug command, debug IPv6 interface, so we can see how things change and how the router reacts when we do some IPv6 addressing on some interfaces on our network. And then we're going to finish up with the verification show commands of show IPv6 route and interface brief to see what's changed once we're done. So let's look at the network topology. We're going to basically be addressing these links right here. We're going to be doing the loopback address with this IPv6 address here, this link over to router 1 with this address, this link over here to router 4 with this address, and you're going to notice that there isn't an address here that I have put out here. And what we're going to do here is we're not going to give it a globally routed IPv6 address. All we're going to do is enable IPv6 on this interface, and we will see as we go through other video cheat sheets that that works just fine. The only thing that changes is that when you trace through your network, you won't get back, because it's not globally routed, you will not get back the link address, because it's just going to be a link local address. You just use the link local address to communicate via routing protocols and whatnot. So you will only get back the only globally routed address, probably, if you go with that model, which would be the loopback address or the management address. So if you traced from R2 to R5, all that you would get back is the globally routed loopback address of R3 and R5. You wouldn't get back the link addresses if you only enabled IPv6 just on the interfaces. So let's go ahead and look at what this is going to entail. This is the interface I was telling you about, where I'm just going to enable IPv6, and the rest of the interfaces are actually getting the IPv6 addresses that we talked about earlier. This is the link between router 2 and router 4, and you can tell that between the 24:24:24 and then :2 for router 2, and router 4 has the corresponding :4 already configured, and the rest of these links are already also configured. But just once again, keep in mind that you do not have to give an interface a globally unique, a globally routed IPv6 address. You can just enable it if you want. And once again, that does change some output of maybe some troubleshooting commands that you'll do that could possibly throw off some folks, but it can be done. So I do a show IPv6 route, and we just have a couple of link local type addresses here to null 0, so we're not going to worry about those. Now I'm going to do a show IPv6 interface brief to see if we've already got some IPv6 interfaces, and we do not. Here's all the interfaces on the router, and there's no associated v6 addresses with them. So let's go ahead and configure our IPv6 addresses, and you do it just like you do with the IPv4 addresses. Instead of saying IP address and then giving the IPv4 address, you say IPv6 address and then give the IPv6 address. And we've already talked about a couple of times the addressing structure. Once again, this is the interface that's going over to router 3, and we're not giving it a globally unique address. So we can go ahead and put those commands in, and now we're going to do a show IPv6 route and see how things have changed. Now we have a bunch of connected prefixes, just that's what we put in, and then also the local address associated with this interface. So not only do you get a connected subnet, but then you also get a local subnet that's associated with the interface. Now let's do a show IPv6 interface brief. And as you can see, we now have some IPv6 information, and here is our link local address that goes over to router 3 that we used with that command right there to just enable IPv6 on the interface. So just to drive home this point a little bit further, here's a show IPv6 interface for the interface where we just enabled IPv6, and it even tells you there is no global address configured. We're down here on the interface that goes over to router 4. You have one.